Alright gang, this week we've got the million-dollar question. Everybody wants to know how you navigate a sell then buy conversation. There's so many ways people are doing it wrong. Please learn how you can do it right. Second thing is, how's my home actually going to be marketed? And the little ninja sword of the interview process. And some questions you need to make sure you're asking when you're interviewing agents. And lastly, if I'm a first-time buyer, how do I successfully negotiate that purchase? It's the Ask Jesse How Show. Let's get into this game. What's happening, gang? It's the hashtag show. I almost said halftime show. That'd be cool if it was the halftime show. What in the world is the hashtag show, Greg?
It's where first-time home buyers and home sellers ask their questions by using our hashtags for home seller FAQ and home buyer FAQ.
And why would someone do that, Greg?
Because they're looking for some answers to questions they just are dying to have answered.
Then let's get started.
All right. These are from the Zillow forums, and Sarah was wondering, should I be concerned if my realtor says he can sell my home and be my new home purchasing agent at the same time?
No, you should not be. I'm in the silliest mood, dude. This is not going to go well. But let's change gears though. So there's a dark side to that. Okay, so let's go twofold in this. First dark side is that's a very common practice where someone needs to sell their home in order to buy their home, and they've decided on an agent, and an agent will oftentimes even financially incentivize the fact that they're going to basically get two transactions in a very short amount of time. And so like for us, I mean, that's what we do. You know, we knock off a percentage point if we're going to be able to help them with both sequentially. Here's the first part of the dark side of that though, Sarah, is that it still needs to be a performance-based conversation, okay? A lot of times what agents will do is they will make you sign a contract, which kind of ties you in with both, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to browbeat that's the formality that you should probably expect. I would highly encourage that you take a minute, though, and try to negotiate against that, though, for this very important purpose, is that this is a very stressful thing going through the sale of a home into and out of home. So you're compounding that times two, okay? And you're disrupting the third of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to make sure that that agent that you hire and that team is on it, dude. Onit.org, okay? Super duper badasses, because a lot of times what happens is you get into the throes of a transaction, and then towards the end, you're like, I don't know if that really ended up going that great. Well, guess what? Now what you get to look forward to is a whole nother transaction with that same person, okay? So the way that we do it is, it's still performance-based. So we'll set an arrangement, a financial one, based on the presumption that we're going to work on both. And then after the first one, we'll still check back in with you and say, hey, are we still good to go? And as long as we've still earned that right, then we'll carry that forward and we'll help you with the down leg. So that's the first part. Second part is to make sure that if possible, you're spreading those two things out as far as humanly available. Humanly available as much as the market will allow. So there's definitely constrictions of time that, like, for example, a buyer's lender on your up leg and the same buyer's lender on your down leg are going to require in terms of possession. But you can sort of play God with those dates to make it almost feel still intense, still very a crazy chunk of time, dare we say chaotic chunk of time. But if you can make it so they're not sequential, but still have the transaction behave sequentially, and I know I'm kind of getting into the rabbit hole right now, but trust me, all this stuff will be unpacked for you if you have an opportunity to talk with somebody about it. And you can make them appear to your buyer when you're selling and to your seller when you're buying that they're not actually concurrent. Well, then you get the best of both worlds. So Sarah, yes, it's possible. It should be a financial incentive. Be careful about what you agree to in that financial incentive relationship, and then apply some significant strategy to be able to make those two transactions work perfectly within one another.
All right, our second question, again from the Zillow forums, is from Jeff. And Jeff was wondering, what are the best ways to advertise a listing?
A lot of folks are going to come, they're going to sit down across from you at your kitchen table, and they're going to have a very pre-prepared presentation. It's going to be polished, it's going to sound good, they're going to have largely the same presentation materials that they're going to apply to you. But here's the reality, and this is what I've learned over my experience, is that might be true to a certain percentage, okay? So it's almost like you might say that's the presentation part, that's kind of what you're expecting. But make sure you're paying attention to that 20% chunk, though, which should be very specific to you and to your situation. It should be prodded with great questions that are asked, which then produces great material content, dare we say, which will probably manifest into copy, which is going to be very unique on how your home is going to be marketed based on the intangibles that make your home similar, but more importantly, unique to anything else. Like for example, I'm thinking right now of how I would market a downtown condo different than I would market, like a beach cottage over in Coronado, different than how I would market like a single family home with a white picket fence, front and backyard over in La Mesa. Right? So there's a lot of what we do that's scientific, and you need that, right? Because otherwise you're just winging it, right? So that's a very important element of it, so that they know what they're doing, they have the numbers, they have the science, they've got the system, you might say, okay? That's an important part. But then what I'm looking for, Jeff, is that 20% that you can tell is being co-created with that brush right there live, which is going to make this thing specific to you. So when I think about the condo downtown, there's probably a very good chance that I'm going to sell that condo before it ever hits the market to someone living in the complex, right? If it's the beach one out in Coronado that we talked about, that's a whole different bag of worms. That's more political. You're probably going to end up working inside of the constructs of another agent who's going to be bringing that buyer, so working within the agent pool. So like the broker caravan is much more important in those situations. Not that they're not in the downtown too, but you get the idea. And then similarly and conversely, how I market to a residential neighborhood with like mining out concentric circles of people that are already germane to the area, that's going to be an approach that's probably going to yield. So there's a lot of similarity and homogeny, but what I'm looking for is that uniqueness, the thing that the agent is asking me, usually in the form of a great question, that then spawns a fertile conversation which applies specifically to me, so that I know I'm being handled uniquely.
Telling the story of the home.
Telling the story of the home, man, you bet. And then not just that, though, not just staying there, because that's almost like a colloquialism now, but how you're applying that story and that narrative to the marketing.
Last question. Alfonso wants to know, I'm a first-time home buyer. What is the one thing you would recommend I do when negotiating a purchase of my first property?
So here's my answer for Alfonso, is don't be that knucklehead first-time buyer who then makes the mistake of forfeiting the most important, advantageous thing in the entire conversation, which is your representation to begin with. Why? Because, Alfonso, you don't pay for it. So many people think that right now is the time where you call the agents, who's got the sign in the front yard, because you're going to get some kind of competitive advantage, and they're going to choose you over the next one. And the truth is, to some extent, that actually could be true. And I want to get down into, it's a whole separate thread we'll do on that. But the real lifting, the real moving of the needle that I want to do here is just to finally blow up that whole concept of people not realizing that we are your advocates. We meaning the buyer's agents, right? It's us against them, and this isn't meant to be adversarial or confrontational. It's just it's a metrics conversation about math and money. Okay, so if you call the agent who's got the sign in the front yard, they're representing the seller. Now they can sign your contract for you, but ultimately what you're doing is you're giving up your ability to be actually served. To have your needs, your interests met. You're just now part of a transaction that they're trying to lubricate to a finish line. Okay? So make sure that you do your due diligence up front. Take the buyer's agent role very seriously, because it's going to be directly proportional to how well the whole thing goes, including, dare we say, your experience, and you're not paying for it. Okay? So that's very critical. So you shouldn't be negotiating your own deal, and make sure that you spend, what's the old Abraham Lincoln quote? God, I hope it's Abraham Lincoln. I think it was, yes. Where they said the cherry tree. Yeah. So if you have, help me out,
An hour.
an hours?
If you have an hour to
Cut it, you
cut
spend
down
40
the
minutes
tree.
sharpening it or something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah, that's terrible. We butchered that. But
That's right.
hopefully you've heard that before and you know what the hell we're trying to talk about. Spend some time, some solid vetting. First, ask for referrals from some people that you know, like, and trust, who you know do good work in the area, who are already proven to be able to do that in your own circles. Then corroborate those with online reviews. So Yelp, help me out, Zillow does reviews, Realtor.com even does reviews, Facebook does reviews. Just try to corroborate and cross-pollinate with as many different online sources to make sure that the narrative that you're researching is congruent, and then give it a shot. Like when I say give it a shot, like don't sign a contract the first time you meet someone, right? So the way that we do it is we break it up into two halves. So experience has shown that you have to have the in-person meeting in the office to come up with a plan, make sure you're a good fit, like inside the brain has to go well, but then you also have to get in the car. And you have to be able to jive in the car. So those two hemispheres, as long as they both go well and you've vetted correctly, that's when it's time to make a marriage and inaugurate an actual relationship. So make sure you're doing that for yourself as well. Yes?
That's it for today.
Thank you, Zillow. Thank you, Jeff.
Sarah
and Alfonso. Fantastic. All right, gang, now's your turn. So next week, we're going to be counting on you to ask us some questions. Go ahead and post a comment down below if you found this on YouTube. Go ahead and hashtag up the internets with Ask Jesse How. That's what we're finally calling this. Or hashtag first time homebuyer, homebuyer FAQs, first time home. It doesn't even freaking matter, dude. Just hashtag some stuff and we'll find it. And we'll see you back next week.